And as we look about us in the world today as believers and see things as they are truly in the light of God's Word, sometimes as Psalm 94 expresses it, the believer says, "Where's God? Why doesn't He come in fierce judgment upon this corrupt and depraved world? How can it get any worse?" It will get worse. If you think you've seen wickedness now, you live for another half century. You will look back upon what we say tonight and say, "My, all we knew was what a kindergartner knows about the works of wicked man. They will be worse." Now, that's the organic development of sin. The one acorn of Satan's lie comes to fuller and fuller expression in connection with the subduing of the earth. I want to call your attention now to the fact that this is under the providence of God. I consider this to be an extraordinarily important point. It is my judgment that the Scriptures teach that without understanding that all these things are under the providence of God, we cannot understand the coming of Christ. And we cannot realize what a great and glorious day that will be. The providence of God controls it all. And, if I may put it that way, and not be misunderstood, the providence of God not only controls, but also restrains the evil that lies in man's heart, the expression of it. There's a startling example of that in the history of the Tower of Babel. I don't want to read that entire passage. But the world was going to build a tower. The first effort to attain to the kingdom of Antichrist. That's what it was. Satan was impatient. Satan couldn't wait. So Satan thought, let's have the anti-Christian kingdom right away. Established here in Babel. But God came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do." And then this striking expression, "And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." You understand that, do you not? God would not permit man at this early stage in the world's history to do all that he had in his wicked heart. And so he restrained them. And did that by the confusion of languages. Powerful restraint. Revelation 13 calls the wound unto death of the beast. Fatal wound. Let me show you at the outset that although that great event at Babel was indeed for the restraining of sin, it was also for the benefit and glory of the church. It is exactly Babel which makes possible our confession. I believe in one holy Catholic Church. That was necessary for God to do too, to reveal fully the riches of His glory. Nevertheless, He restrained them. And so His providence is completely the power that enables enables man to do what he wills. God said, if they are not restrained, nothing will be restrained of them. They'll do as they please. That can't happen yet. Christ hasn't come. The church isn't gathered. So I will restrain them in their evil endeavors. I think the time comes, and I think the scriptures indicate that there comes a time in the history of the world, very, very near to the end, when God says, I will restrain them no longer. They may do as they please. And we live in those days today. There are no restraints. Man does as he pleases. In his speech, in the development of his own views of the creation and of life, in his deeds. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is holy. God is almost like an angry parent who many times reprimands his child for doing something wrong without any success, and finally says to his child, all right, you don't want to do what I say, go ahead and do what you want. I don't care. Something like that. Except, of course, that God gives man over to every imagination of his heart and to anything he wants to do, because it is necessary for God's glory itself, for man to reveal himself in all his wickedness. The ways in which God restrains the outbreaking and manifestation of sin are many, many of which we do not even know. There is, for example, the fact that man, as the canons of Dort express it, in some instances still has a certain regard for virtue and good order in society. He has that regard not because he has common grace in his heart, but because he understands that a society where everyone can murder everyone else at will, and that everyone can commit fornication as much as he pleases, is a society in which it is impossible to live. But God does that because the church is in the world, and the church is being gathered, and the church must do her work. While if sin rages unchecked in the creation and in the lives of men, the church would not be able to survive. God restrains sin in the wicked and the manifestation of sin by controlling how much of the creation man discovers and how much he is able to put to his own use and in what ways he puts them to his own use. God controls and directs that. The powers of electricity were not discovered, but God said the time is come. And so that power was harnessed for the use of man. God restrains sin also because by his providence and direct control of things, his sovereignty determines the circumstances of a man's life completely. The time he is born, the nation in which he was born, the race from which he came forth, the talents which were given him from birth, his availability, the availability of education for him, the wealth or poverty of his parents, every detail of a man's life is determined by God. And the result of it is that sin cannot come to full expression in the life of every man. Cain couldn't sin and murder Abel with a .38 caliber revolver. There was no such thing.